Welcome to Papa Nick's Music. I am, as always, your host, Papa Nick Lewis. We took a week off last week. Didn't really intend to do it. We had a last minute corporate retreat here at the international headquarters of the multimedia conglomerate that is Papa Nick's Music. But we're back. We're back this week. And we are continuing our Perfect Album series this week. This is installment number 5. Now, today is more of an administrative day than anything else. When I first started this Perfect Album series, I didn't really expect it to be a series. I just wanted to have a video where I outlined what I think of when I think of a perfect album. What are the criteria that I use when I think of a perfect album? There are 4 of these criteria. Criterion number 1 is that there cannot be any skippers, right? You can't regularly skip over one of the tracks. Criterion number 2 is that you can't think of anything that could be done that would improve the quality of the album. Criterion number 3 is that it has to be in some way superlative. It's got to be better than its peers, whatever you're comparing it against. And then finally, the album has to have a level of cohesiveness to it that you think of it as a single work, that you are uncomfortable if you only can listen to bits and pieces of it. It's like watching your favorite movie. You don't want to sit down and start that movie unless you know you've got enough time to finish the movie off, right? Same logic. So I did my first video where I outlined those 4 things, and I gave examples of albums that I thought fell short of perfect because of each of those. And then after a period of reflection, I thought, well, it only makes sense for me to then follow up with a video of albums that I think are perfect. And I've done 3 of those. I've done 10 albums in each of the 3 videos. So up to this point, I have listed what I think of as 30 perfect albums. And I'm not done yet. There are more that I can pick out of just my library. I'm not talking about all albums ever created. This is just the ones I've got access to. I've been very careful as I've been doing these perfect album videos to do 2 things. First is that I am very careful about saying I am not ranking these videos. I'm just listing them. I've been arranging them chronologically. And I go out of my way to say there's nothing in the order of the albums that is in any way intended to imply relative quality, right? I'm not ranking these things. I'm just listing them. The second thing that I've done is, with one exception, I've gone out of my way to avoid including albums by artists whose albums I have done ranking videos of. Mostly because I've already done the ranking videos of those artists. I've talked about the albums there, so I don't want to spend all of my time talking about the same albums over and over again. But it occurs to me, I'm starting to get a glimmering sense of a project down the line, which is going to require me to actually rank these perfect albums. And if I'm going to rank these perfect albums, then I need to be including albums from the artists about whom I've done ranking videos. So what we're going to do this week is I'm going to go back over the videos I've done so far, the ranking videos I've done so far, and I'm going to pull out the albums from those artists that I think are perfect. Cool? Okay. There are 14 of these things. So before I get into this, the subjectivity notice. Because, of course, I've got to do the subjectivity notice, right? All artistic appreciation is subjective. There is no such thing as objectively good or objectively bad art. There is only art that you like and art that you do not. And as long as we keep that in mind, as long as we remember that this is all a matter of opinion, no one is right, no one is wrong, it's all relative, then this is a fun conversation. It's instructive, it's entertaining. nothing but good things can come out of talking about art. Unless you start thinking that somebody has to be right or wrong. That's where the wheels come off the wagon. The wheels come off the wagon? That sounds like it ought to be an expression, but I'm not sure that it is. There's no right, there's no wrong. There is only preference. And as long as we keep that in mind, it's a wonderful conversation. So if you disagree that any of these albums are perfect, and if you would include other albums instead, by all means, drop a note down below. Let me know where you think that, where your opinions differ from mine. That's always a fun conversation. As long as you don't try to tell me I'm wrong and you're right. Just like I'm not trying to tell you that I'm right and you're wrong. Cool. Okay. With that out of the way, let's jump in and do these. The first album ranking video that I did was the Beach Boys. I did the bottom 5 and top 10. I didn't rank all of the albums. I would have been there all day if I'd ranked all the albums. And in the Beach Boys catalog, out of all 29, 28, 30, depending on how you count them, albums, there are 2 that I would argue are perfect. Again, I'm doing these chronologically. The first of the 2 is 1966's Pet Sounds, and the second of the 2 is 1973's Holland. These are both fantastic albums, and they are night and day. If you listen to them back to back, they sound nothing like one another. They're 2 really fantastic albums. The second album ranking video I did was the Kiss album ranking video, where I focused on the original makeup years. From the first album to 1981 or 82 or 83, whatever it was, Creatures of the Night. And all of that, in those 14 albums that they cranked out during the original makeup years, I would argue there is one perfect album, and that is 1978's Gene Simmons. I love this album. Oh, listen to me talk about it in that Kiss ranking video. It's a perfect album. The third ranking video that I did was Steely Dan. And Steely Dan, I would argue, has 3 perfect albums. They are also sequential. They are 1975's Katy Lied, 1976's The Royal Scam, and 1977's Asia. I love all 3 of these albums. All 3 of these albums are perfect. After Steely Dan, I did a video ranking the albums of the Knack, and I'm not going to worry about including this here because I've already included the one perfect Knack album. I mentioned it in one of the previous videos, and that was Round Trip from 1981. The next album ranking video I did after the Knack was The Police, and The Police have 2 perfect albums, 2 of their 5. That's a pretty good record. 1978's Outlandos d'Amor and 1979's Regatta de Blanc. A quick side note here. After I posted that video, I went back and I had a question about something that I thought I had gotten wrong, so I went back and watched the video again. I don't just sit around watching my videos all day long. I'm a narcissist, but I'm not that much of a narcissist. And I realized that something I was trying to make clear, I don't think I made fully clear. Regatta de Blanc is, spoiler alert if you haven't seen the video yet, it is my favorite Police album. I think it's the best Police album. And I think it's the best Police album because it has the highest concentration of Stuart Copeland composition on it. Stuart Copeland wrote, a bunch of the songs, or co-wrote a bunch of the songs on this thing. One thing I need to make super clear, this is not a situation where I bought the album, I saw that Stuart Copeland wrote the songs, and therefore I decided that I would like it. I got my original versions of the first 2 or 3 albums through I am of a certain age, I got them through the Columbia House Music Club, which meant that they were knockoff cassettes. They didn't have liner notes in them. When I'm listening to these albums, I have no idea who has written what. I didn't know anything about the band. But I knew the first time I heard Regarde de Blanc that I liked it better than the first one. And I knew as I listened to subsequent albums that I still preferred Regarde de Blanc. It wasn't until several years later when I actually had vinyl copies of these albums and I could see who wrote what, who's performing what. That's when I realized, okay, so that's it. I like those. They're Stuart Copeland songs. Okay. Stuart Copeland is the reason I like the Police. Okay. Make sure we've got the causal chain as clear as we can make it there. After my Police album video, I did a video ranking the albums of Billy Joel. And Billy Joel, I would argue, has 4 perfect albums. 4. That's a lot. They are 1977's The Stranger, 1978's 52nd Street, 1980's Glass Houses, and 1982's The Nylon Curtain. These are all fantastic albums, and they are all, I would argue, perfect albums. The next album ranking video I did was The Monkees. I ranked the albums of The Monkees. Sadly, the Monkees did not churn out a perfect album. The closest they got was Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn. Let me try that one again. The closest they got was Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn, and Jones Limited. And the problem I have with this is that there are 2 skippers on there. Cuddly Toy, a song that I just despise, and Peter Percival Patterson's Pet Pig Porky, which... and if we've got 2 skippers, it cannot be perfect. That's kind of the problem with a group like the Monkees, because they were 4 different guys with 4 very different tastes in terms of what kind of music they would make. It was pretty much guaranteed once they took control of the music that it would be fractured, it would be splintered enough that there would always be something that you don't like. Now, the positive side is there's always something that you like, right? there is really good stuff on all of these albums. But, yeah, due to the structure of the group, there's no way they could make a perfect, cohesive album. That's just not going to happen. And then finally, my last album ranking video was of Michael Nesmith albums. And Michael Nesmith cranked out 2 of these perfect albums. The first was his first album with the First National Band, Magnetic South, from 1970, and the second was 1992's Tropical Campfires. So, I'm adding these 14 albums to the list. That brings my grand total of perfect albums up to 44. And like I said, I see a project on the horizon that's going to involve me sorting these in order of my own preference, in order of relative quality. They're all perfect. That does not mean that they are all equal. Wait, isn't that what perfect means? No, that's not what perfect means. But more about that later, after I've had a chance to flesh it out a little bit. I hope you enjoyed the conversation today. If you did, then I would appreciate it if you'd consider clicking the like button. If you are interested to see where this thing is going, then go ahead and click that subscribe button. And if you click the subscribe button, then click the little notification bell as well, because thank you very much for sticking out this far into the video, and I hope that the rest of your day is delightful. See you soon. Creek.